Now it's better. Okay, sorry about that. My technical, issues was all said and done. Okay, this Torah sometimes one tries to be a little bit more expansive in terms of explaining the Kabbalistic depth that exists. These texts sometimes one wants to try to simplify them and not go into them so much. And there's a number of things one has to really be aware of when one is studying Rav Nachman. We're interested in what he has to tell us about ourselves, about God, about our relationships to God, and these very, very important, what I would call theological principles. We're interested in improving ourselves. But Rav Nachman is not just simply a self-help kind of a resource. It's not that. I mean, Rav Nachman is a tremendous sage, tremendous scholar, tremendous chacham, who has tremendous gifts in terms of explication and tremendous gifts in terms of his artistry. And of course, it's something that I do highlight all of the time. And I feel that it's unfair to Rav Nachman to leave any of these aspects of his talent unexplored. So on the one hand, though, we have a limitation. We have 6 classes, we have 7 shiurim, whatever they are. It's 1 hour, and can't really do justice to it. And maybe I have to go ahead and compress these things a little bit more. Maybe I have to go ahead and make 2 sessions of these a little bit. But I want to be able to not only share with you some of the ideas in terms of what we can do for ourselves in terms of improving ourselves, but I want us to also learn Torah. And learn Torah is that, to explore these Kabbalistic principles, also to explore, the manner in which Rav Nachman uses the range of rabbinic literature as well as the texts of Torah and Nevi'im and Kesuvim and all of these things in order to be able to present these pictures within the context of a very, very vast, rich source material background. And this way, you not only are you learning something that has actual tangible benefit for your life, such as this issue of Yiras Hashem, but that you are also learning Torah. We want to be able to learn Torah. You want to be able to learn psukim. You want to be able to learn Rashis. You want to be able to learn, different kinds of Kabbalistic ideas and notions, which are very, very important. Anyway, what I'm doing is that I'm explaining to you a bit of the issues that confront us. But having said all of this, I digress, and let us go further with what we're doing. So, Rav Nachman is explaining to us is that there's no way to get to Yiras Hashem without this meditative, self-examining process. He calls that mishpat. Mishpat, of course, is you ever see if you would say, what is the symbol? If you would talk about in our worlds, what is the symbol for justice? Adjudication, I should say. If you go out in front of any court of law, which is the seat of justice and where adjudication take place, and you would say they have a symbol. They have a symbol for justice. And what is that symbol for justice that we so often see? Can anybody tell me? Would anybody venture forth an idea? I'd like you to go and participate in this. What is the symbol that we have in our societies for justice? Because it's particularly relevant to what we want to be saying. Scales. That is correct. Absolutely, that's correct. Scales. That's correct. Scales, the scales of justice, but also, this notion of the justice being blind, and the idea of the scales. And that is, of course, the idea of the weighing of that. Now that's what we call mishpat. In Kabbalah, the idea of mishpat is also that central part of the Sephirotic body. You have your Sephirotic charts. Remember, I told you must bring your Sephirotic charts and have them available for this. Has everybody done that? I'm going to go ahead and ask you that question. Do you have the structure of the Sefirot, particularly as they appear in the back of the Breslov Research Institute's wonderful edition of Likutei Moharan in the back? Do we have that? Well, if you don't have it in front of you, Sandy, it doesn't do you immediately a lot of good. So in other words, when you're sitting down to learn and to study, it makes sense. I'm not going to go ahead and tell you something that you don't already know, to have the source material there in front of you. All of those who also are guilty of this heinous oversight, please be corrected in the future. Okay. I'm sure you go through this in Chaya's class. I'm sure you go through this in a lot of other classes, but I want to go through it here in order that you have this in your mind, because mishpat, which Rav Nachman is talking about, the process of self-adjudication, of self-analysis, as it were, of oneself, which Rav Nachman explains to us at the very, very beginning, in the first paragraph of this lesson, is that what one has to do in order to do this is by means of what does one elevate the yira? Okay, the yira, okay, that is by means of mishpat. He explains it by means of mishpat. Mishpat is this idea of judgment. In this particular case, it's referring to this self-adjudication, the self-judgment that one has to be able to go through. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that what he is also referring to over here too is this particular sphera in the middle is known as Tiferet. Tiferet also goes by the name of Mishpat because it is, in terms of the dialectical opposing forces of Chesed on the one side, Din in Gevura on the left side. Okay, Mishpat, Tiferet, is this universal harmonizing agent that properly balances these dialectically opposing forces within the spherotic body and makes sure that they achieve a perfect blend, dependent upon the particular circumstances that are necessary to enable that flowing down into Malchus, that it should be all properly measured and balanced. So the idea over here being as follows, Rav Nachman is saying, is that in order to be able to elevate fear back to its root, this notion of fear is this awe, this notion of the recognition of God and the Romamut Hashem and the exaltedness of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and its impact upon the individual. Of course, this notion of this self-contraction in the face of the recognition of the exaltedness of a Kodesh Baruch Hu is Yiras Hashem. Is in fact fear of God, man in juxtaposition to the Creator. Okay, it's a very lowly, very, very insignificant creature in relationship to the Creator. That recognition, of course, is in fact Yirat Hashem. Okay, but as Rav Nachman is explaining to us, over here, in order to be able to get to all of this, in order to be able to get to this at the end of the day, is that one needs das, for shoresh hayirahu das. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump over to the other page because I'm going to go to the presentation side, which is the whiteboard. Okay, notes the presentation. And the presentation, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our particular lesson. As I always say, I love this. This is really my favorite part of the entire lesson, okay? Where Rav Nachman here is in this point right here. Take that. No, we're going to go like that right here, where he says, number in Gimel 3, and the source of fear is da'at. This knowledge is holy not as holy da'at, as he calls it, holy knowledge. In other words, that in order to be able to recognize God, in order to be able to get into a position where one sees and acknowledges and has the consciousness of the creator, okay, one needs das, knowledge. Das, of course, is not just simply knowledge. It's knowledge, number one, but it's also awareness. Number two, it's consciousness. Okay, awareness and consciousness are two different types of things. And remember, from the very first class we started off with, I posed the question to you, do we really know that God is forget about being the creator of everything. We know that. Everybody knows that. But is here, is precisely with us, standing right across from us in Beit Knesset when we daven, sitting across from us and around us and beside us when we're learning, or we're sitting at a table having dinner with family or friends, and is with us in the workplace and over right there with us, right here on our shoulder all the time. Are we aware of that? Do we have the consciousness of that? Do we have the knowledge that such and such is a fact? That is das. That is das. That's what we call das. And that requires us, of course, to have this constant recognition. Now, it's very difficult. We are limited beings. We do not necessarily have the capability of being able to do one thing with full concentration, and at the same time have this consciousness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right here with us at the exact precise time with it. We might, if we go ahead and we pick our head up from our desk or from whatever it is that we're reading or that we're writing or whatever it is that we're doing or speaking about, and then go ahead and push our mind back, we might be able to achieve that consciousness once again. But that's the point of all of this at the end of the day, is that you can't really achieve this level of yira, is to have it, which is a constant awareness of the creator, which would then inform and certainly impact the totality of one's behavior. If that were if you really understood and knew and had consciousness as much as one possibly could have, as often as one could have, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually being there with you at all times, things would be very, very, very different in terms of one life. And the cultivation of this year is directly related to this das. Now, das, okay, again, is an important Kabbalistic notion. Again, if we go back to this wonderful structure of the Sfirot in the Breslov Research Institute's edition over here, we see that das is right over here. We know we have this, we know that. I'm not going through the Sfirot with everybody. I'm sure that everybody knows it. Everybody's going and taking other classes, and they're wonderful classes, which all these things are explained in. But you do know that we have this structure, and you have this middle column, this amud d'tziyosa, this middle column, which goes all the way down from Malchus, which is, in our particular case, the world of Asiyah, the world of actuality, okay, all the way up to Yesod, through to Tiferet. Then we have Das, and Das, of course, interrelates, of course, with Chachma and Bina as well as Tiferet, all the way to the top into Keter, to the very, 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 very heights, to the very, very top part. So there is a close correlation. Okay, you see this, spherotically speaking, between Tiferet Mishpat, that process of adjudication, of self-analysis and self-judgment, together with das. To das, they go together. They're directly connected in one form or another. The das, certainly the consciousness, is passed on, as it were, into Tiferet, into that process of adjudication. And these sefirot, which of course are descriptive, metaphorically speaking, of cosmic processes, okay, have their correlation, as we keep on saying, within the human realm, because the basic assumption is that man is the purpose, the objective, the ultimate epicenter of creation. And as a result of that, everything in creation is there to somehow support and to progress man in terms of his development, in terms of his potential, and all of that. And accordingly, then, everything in creation has something to do with man, directly connected on behalf of man, for man, in support of man. And so it all is anthrocentric, human-centric. Okay? Accordingly, the idea is, in Kabbalah, the basic assumption is that these cosmic processes of creating the universe, purpose of which is man, have close correlation and correspondence in that which goes on within the human being. So here we have this idea of mishpat, of self-adjudication. We have to be able to continuously be looking and analyzing ourselves, through this process of Rav Nachman calls these bodhidus, this meditative process. And this is something that Rav Nachman insists upon is absolutely essential for true spiritual development. You can't do that without continuously looking at oneself, to analyze what it is that one does, what one doesn't do, the motivations that one has, the failures that one is confronted with continuously, the progress, the good things, the bad. All of these things become the stuff of analysis and weighing them back and forth. Again, ultimately, this purpose, okay, which is certainly for progress and development, is to also heighten das, heighten self-awareness, heighten consciousness. Okay, in this particular case, the self-awareness, the awareness, and the consciousness, of course, is of the Creator. Now, that consciousness and awareness of the Creator is, again, it's reflexive. What I mean by that is that the individual has to consciously push himself or herself, okay, towards that recognition. You're saying you're sitting there and reading in your office, or you're talking, and your mind is absorbed with your immediate activity. You have to consciously want and desire to have the consciousness and the awareness that perhaps when you have the freedom, okay, that it is focused, that there is that mindset to be aware of the Creator, because that informs all of one's activities, the way one talks, the way one speaks, the way one treats one's fellow man, one's personal behavior in an entire realm. Again, if you knew, if you understood that the Creator was right here, your behavior certainly would be different. Rare would be the individual who acts poorly in front of the king. That's when one is on one's best behavior, because one is not going to act poorly in front of the king, in the king's chamber, right to his face. Certainly not. Why would that be any different than with God? Okay? Certainly not. Is everybody with me? You're with me now, right? So this idea of mishpat, the self-adjudication, which is this idea of weighing one's actions, whatever, again, which is rooted in this notion of this balancing and harmonizing agent within the spherotic bodies. What we're doing, we're weighing and analyzing our actions, good, bad, taking a look at the bad, analyzing where it comes from. What was the motivation? What's the problem over there? Was it completely bad? Again, it's a very, very analytical way of looking at ourselves. We're not asking anybody to do it for us. We're not asking for a good psychiatrist to whom we'll pay, X hundreds of dollars for the 45-minute hour in terms of analysis. We're looking at ourselves. We're looking at how to develop that skill within ourselves. And the way that you do this is via this meditative, this continuous process, this regular, continuous process of hitbodedus, of the meditative process. And this is basically this talking to God. And this talking to God in the process of the analysis accomplishes that reflexive objective, which is not only are we looking to develop a sense of God being there. How do you develop that? You talk to God. You talk to God. You may be ultimately at the beginning talking to yourself because you don't really have that feeling and that sensitivity of speaking to the Creator. I know that many times then when I try to do this, what I'm doing, I'm saying, so something, Mordechai, what you really doing, you're just talking to yourself. You're talking out loud, but you're talking to yourself, and you're not sensing on the other hand, the Kadosh Baruch Hu being there. That may be the case, but that's the process of developing that sense of otherness as well, that you're not just talking to yourself, you are in the presence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, of another. And that hitbodedu, that sense of aloneness, as it were, it no longer becomes at some point just a question of you being alone. It's you're alone with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and that's an objective, okay? And in that process of developing that sense of otherness in the hitbodedut, what you're doing is you're engaging in front of the other in that judgment, that self-judgment, that self-analysis. You have the greatest analyst in front of you, for whom you're going and laying out in front of it all of your issues and all of your problems. And it doesn't have to always be the deepest, darkest crevice of your inner self that you're going into to be able to do. It could be anything. Everybody during the course of every day has so many different issues that one is confronted with. And, talking about, most anything, most mundane thing is in many ways a self-analytical type of process. What it is that I was walking down the street, and I was going to catch the bus or something of that sort, and someone was there. I didn't go ahead and give them the proper hello. I didn't go ahead and I met somebody. There's so many different types of things. It doesn't have to be all negative as well. You could go ahead and shed some nachas, in terms of things that you do that are very good during the course of a day. Don't just go ahead and look at the bad things that you do. That's not a proper analysis either. You do a lot of good stuff. You're filled with lots of good. Rav Nachman continuously goes ahead and encourages us that we must look the good things within ourselves, because you don't do that, you're not getting a proper view of yourself. You don't have that, because you're certainly not all bad. You're not even mostly bad at all. I don't know, that guy out there, I think maybe a little different. I'm just kidding about that. I don't see anybody here anyway. How do I know? But that's the point. The point is that development of the das meaning knowledge, but that more importantly, it's that consciousness. And consciousness is made up of more than just, I know that God is there. I do know that. Okay, and I can even, when I think about it in my intellect, I can prove it to myself to the point that I'm satisfied with the proof. But that's not the point. The point of that is that intellectual knowledge has to pass into real substantive awareness. And that's really the point of being able to develop that, to the point that you really have a relationship with God, as you do with anybody else. Whether you talk to a friend about your issues, you have to be able to talk to God. There's no better friend than having God. at the end of the day. No better understanding, no more patient, no more forgiving than Hashem. That's exactly what it is. If we would really look at that way and understand that and convince ourselves of it, we could transform ourselves. We could transform ourselves in the process. This is what Rav Nachman is talking about over here, is the elevation of Yira back to its root. Its root is in Das. Of course it's in Das. How can I have true Yiras Hashem, okay, if I don't have the knowledge, the awareness, the consciousness of God as being so much of a reality for me, right? Sandra has it in front of her right now. That's good. That's very good. Now we can continue. That's good. I was very worried about that. You feel it. Yes, of course it's a real experience, but you got to be honest with yourself. It's not just an easy experience, to be aware of that. You have to develop that so that it's very, very tangible. It's good. You have an intellectual awareness that you have it, that God is right there with you. Saying to have those sefirot with you. You should go get them, so that it's not me that's doing that, but it's coming from another source much greater than me, of course. You understand that. And when you recognize that, then you have that awareness. It certainly takes time to develop. That's the reason why this bodhidut process, that meditative, that self-judging, that self-analysis, that self-reflection, that discussion, that aloneness together with God has to be regularly performed. Okay, regularly being the operative word. It's not so much the issue of how much time is devoted to it, but the regularity of it being of utmost importance. And of course, that's how one develops this. So on the one hand here, what have we done? On the one hand, we discussed something that makes sense. Makes sense. Right. What we said is that certainly made sense. Then we've gone ahead and we've used words. We've used words to be able to describe this. The words that we've used so far are Yira, Mishpat, Das. All of these very, 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 very major concepts. The concept of Yira, which is ultimately, the awareness, the consciousness, the respect of a Kadosh Baruch Hu being there. And not just being, having the intellectual knowledge, but actually being there, knowing that God is there and having that consciousness that is in fact there, in the means of doing mishpat. Now, mishpat, again, has that notion that we said right from the very beginning of that weighing, that looking analysis. Analysis means to look at both sides, to be able to see it, properly contextualize it, be able to make sure that one gains a clarity over things. And that's a very important thing. You must have clarity. The clarity, you need to be able to see clearly. You need to be able to think clearly. You need to be able to experience clarity. That's for sure is the case. And that's what it is that we really want to be able to develop. All of us are intelligent. We're intelligent. Some have more intelligence than others, whatever the case may be. But clarity is something else. To be able to know something and then to be able to see it and to be able to understand it and to be able to apply it requires an appreciation and a clarity. And that's what we're talking about, over here. And then that das. Okay, now before I go into das, the Mishpat then has that Kabbalistic notion, the idea of both sides of the spherotic body. Chesed being this right, externally oriented chesed. Again, one is kind and generous to another, somebody outside oneself, which of course is that externally oriented thrust, which is chesed. On the other hand, din, which is on the dialectical opposite side of the spherotic chart, okay, is the opposite of that. It's an internal, it's a boundary setting type of thing. It's not expansively outward, it's limiting. It puts an end, it puts a boundary, it puts a measure, upon things. And ultimately, you need both of them to be able to function. You can't have unlimited, externally oriented chesed. If you do that, you get yourself in trouble. You can't go ahead and pour an unlimited amount of chesed to a child. Okay, you'll spoil them. You'll ruin a child. You can go ahead and ruin a situation with too much love, with too much generosity, with too much. It has to be properly balanced. It has to be limited. It has to be applied in a judicial type of mode. That is mishpat. That is tiferes, is the balancing of both sides of these things so that the proper balance is struck. That's what we're made up of human beings. We're made up of human beings that have all of these different types of components that we have within us that need to be properly balanced. Okay. Now that balance that we look to achieve is directly tied in, of course, to das. We have to. That das is that knowledge, that awareness, the consciousness. Okay, is that which gives us the clarity and understanding to then be able to engage in this process of adjudication. Ultimately, with the ultimate goal of everything is to achieve this consciousness of God, the Yirat Hashem. Because if we're aware of God and we understand what that means, and we understand our place within all of this creation vis-a-vis the Creator, we understand how limited, how small, how utterly vulnerable and dependent we are upon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Yiras Hashem. That's true Yiras Hashem. And here Rav Nachman is talking about we have to be able to strip away the false elements that exist within Yir. Yir means fear. It means fear. I can be fear of a lot of things. He says, to be able to go and to realize that those things that we're afraid of, as you used to think, robbers and the government, back in his days, the government wasn't as beneficent, generous, and wonderful, and morally upright as our governments are today. Okay, I'm only saying that moderately facetiously, only moderately facetiously. Certainly, in comparison to 18th or 19th century Ukraine and Russia, what we Baruch Hashem have in our world is near heaven in comparison. Let's go ahead and understand that. With all of its faults, in comparison to other times the Jewish people and places Jewish people lived, what we have is just Baruch Hashem, the most wonderful thing, even with all of its faults. Okay, let's be able to to properly understand that. Okay, now in order to be able to achieve all of this year, we have to be able to balance all these things with mishpat and das, drawing. So he says that how do you elevate fear? How do you elevate fear? Elevate fear means to take the common fears that are around. Again, I won't get into the Kabbalistic notion. Last week I started doing that, and I realized after going to do it, I'm going to get involved with the whole thing, the breakage of the kalim and so forth, and the falling down of the shards into this world, which become the sources of evil and confusion and doubt and all of those negative things that we're trying to combat. At the end of the day, again, everything that we're trying to do here, with this self-adjudication is in order to remove doubt, in order to remove questions, in order to be able to seek clarity, all of those things which have their root, in the breakage of the kalim, the vessels that were to carry all of this divine energy and divine power and life into this world. There was the cataclysmic event occur when the vessels break. The vessels break, and it causes all of these shards to fall down along with the kalim into this world. Okay. Are we having problem in terms of the reception? I see that that some have left as a result of not having the right reception? Are we okay? Oh, yours is good. Sandra's good. So we're okay. I just don't want to make sure. Okay. Miriam says it's okay. Sandra says it's okay. Sandy says it's right now, but it is iffy. Iffy. Iffy means it's not necessarily balanced so well. So we have to be very, very careful. Okay, good. So these things come into the world, and they become the source of problems, of evil. Okay, and what we do is that we want to go ahead and we want to extricate. We want to extricate these remnants, these sparks of the good, and we want to be able to pull them away from these covering husks that encapsulate all of these issues and problems, all of these false fears that we have. You know, the recognition over here is that ultimately, look, everything comes from the Kodesh Baruch Hu. All of the good comes from the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's all there is good. If it comes from the Kodesh Baruch Hu, it means it's good. That which we look upon, we said that it's not really good, you know, is because of the fact that we don't really have the right vantage point. We don't have the right perspective to be able to see that it is in fact good. Okay, we think that it's bad, but it might ultimately be, in fact, it is very good. We have to be able to discern. We have to be able to strip away all of these sparks of goodness that come from a Kodesh Baruch Hu and elevate them. How do we elevate them? Because that's what this lesson is all about. That's the elevation of the Yira back to its roots. Back to its roots. Okay? Let's go and read a little bit. Everybody with me? Everybody there? Good. We're up to Gimel. We're up to Gimel right over here. V'shorish hayira hudas. We've gone ahead and we've explained that. Okay, the root of fear, the source of fear, the root is das. Kamosha kosav be'etz chaim, as is written in the Sefer of Chaim, of Eitz Chaim, the tree of life, which is Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital is one of the main students of the Ari, of Rav Yitzchak Luria, and he wrote a book that basically was the encapsulation of all of the Torah that he learned from the Ari, and it's called the Eitz Chaim, which is one of the main source books of the Lurianic Kabbalistic system, and is quoted very, very often in Rav Nachman's writings. So he says like this, is that the root of Yira is Das, K'moshe kosav be'etz chaim shebenatzpach hu bedas dezer anpin, and we're not going to explain too much about that. K'moshe kosav ostovin yiras Hashem v'das Elokim timtza. Shebenatzpach, these are all the letters that have the ending. You know that there are 5 letters, mem, nun, tzadi, pei, and chet. Okay, that have not only a regular, that you use them at the beginning of words, but also those are final. We call them final mem, final nun, final tzadi, pei, sofit, and chet. You know, that's what we have at the very, very end. And he says that the following is that there is in Kabbalah is that these letters, there's opening letters and there are closing letters. There's 5 closing letters and there's 5, you know, there's all the other opening letters. Opening letters means the way that you can actually use at the beginning of a word. These letters are only used at the end of words. So, you know, again, if we understand something, the beginning of a word has unlimited potential. Okay, because if I start a letter with, let's say, for example, the letter chet, I write down that chet, the possibility is enormous. I could be writing chayim, I could be writing chayit, I could write a tailor, okay, I could be writing chaticha, a piece of something. the possibilities of what the letter at the beginning can get. The possibilities, the realm is infinite. That notion of the letters at the beginning have the idea of chesed, of the right side of the spheroid chart. The idea that they have this unlimited outside opening potential, whereas these letters, which are only used at the end of a word, they finalize it. There is nothing else after this letter is written. The mem at the very, very end. The plural that we use, for example, has the mem sofit. At the end, we have nun at the end of words. But once you go ahead and put that last letter in, that word is done. There is no more possibility for that. There is a limitation, a boundary, a border that is put in place. That is the expression, okay, of the attribute of din on the other side. On the other side. So what is explaining here as follows: the root of yira is das, okay, and he says like this, is that like it's written in Eitz Chaim, that the 5 ending letters are gevurot. Those are from the left side, and that is das in zer anpin, and those have their root also in the das of the divine persona that's known as zer anpin, which is the short, impatient face. Which basically is the body of the spherot, which is effectively the psycho-emotional attributes of the spherotic chart. Okay, and he says that what is the proof of that? The verse in Mishlei reads, "Oz tovin yiras Hashem v'das Elokim timtzo." So he quotes now a pasuk from Mishlei. Mishlei, of course, is Proverbs from none other than Shlomo Melech. And I want to read this to you. You tell me what it says. In chapter Bet, which you can always go ahead and do when you're preparing your lesson, you see the particular verse. The verse is in Mishlei, Proverbs 2, verse 5. It says like this, the beginning of the chapter. He says, B'ni, im tikach amorai mitzvosai titzboni toch. He says, if you'll accept my statements, my saying, and my mitzvos, you basically, you preserve with you. Lahakshiv lachachma oznecha, tatel libecha latvuna, to basically pay attention, to incline your ear to wisdom, okay? And what you do is you turn your heart, to tvuna, to understanding. Ki im labina tikra, latvuna tikach kolecha. That bina you should call, and for understanding, you should always reach out with your voice. Dalet, im tefakshena chakosef v'chatmonim tachapsena. If you seek her like silver, if you go after her like kesef and like treasures, you delve into it and you look after it, you seek. Oz tavin yiras Hashem. At the end of the day, what are you going to do? You will understand yiras Hashem, v'das Elokim timtza, and you will find das Elokim, das knowledge of God. So here, Rav Nachman, in a very shortened type of way, is expressing this idea, is that, if you're smart, if you really go ahead and turn your heart properly, intelligently, okay, with enormous energy and with enormous precise effort, okay, to the seeking of wisdom, as well as the understanding. Don't forget Kaufman, Bina, he's got all of these kind of things going on over there. If you call out to Bina, to understanding, and you're really, if you want to be smart, in other words, if you want to be wise, if you want to really do that which is the right thing, and you do that with all of your heart and with your desire that that's what you want, if you really want to know the true foundations of wisdom, he says, if you do this, if you seek after it like silver, if you go ahead and you pursue it like you go after money, as if it were money, and if you would go ahead and you'd search it and seek after it as if it were treasure, that precious, he says, then you will understand Yiras Hashem, understand Yiras Hashem. Again, tavin, lahavin, the notion of bina. In other words, it's not only understanding, but it's also the spherotic reference to bina. Then you will understand Yiras Hashem, v'das Elokim timtza. You will find Das Elokim, the knowledge of God. But see, what Rav Nachman is pointing out here, as is illustrated in Mishlei, is that this is a process. Just like I believe Sandra said beforehand, it's a process. It's a long process. It takes time to develop. And what is the most important part of this process, according to the words of Proverbs? What's the most important part of this? What do you need to have most of all if you're involved in this process? What is most necessary? What's most necessary? I'm asking you the question. I'm not telling you this rhetorically. I just want to make sure who's been paying attention. What is the ingredient on your part that is most essential for success? Seeking Hashem with all your heart. Desire. Absolutely correct. That's exactly correct. That's the key. That is the key. That's the key. If you seek it like you're going after it like kesef, like silver, like money, if you're chasing after it and seeking it and digging for it as if it's treasure, with that desire to be able to have that, oz tavin yiras Hashem, then you can understand yiras Hashem, and then you'll find das Elokim. So in other words, that both of these things go together. The notion of yiras Hashem and das, and here we're talking about das Elokim. That's the knowledge of God, but this goes both ways. It's not only the das Elokim that you'll find, but you'll also develop that das within yourself. Again, that's that reflexive notion. It's not only that externally oriented one towards God, but it's also that which is within you that you've been able to develop, both of that. But you have to have that desire to go ahead and to seek it and to find it. And that is that process of mishpat, that mishpat of going ahead and being aware. I have to develop this capability. I have to go ahead and elevate Yira from its lowest elements over here back up to its ultimate root, which is in Das, which is in pure consciousness. And Das, and it's Das Elokim, it's related to knowledge of God. But really what we're talking about is the das of within my mind, the consciousness of my mind. So the key is, and you have to be able to keep this, because we're going to work with this now, next time when we get there, is that we have within it patience. Perseverance is all part of that desire. You don't have patience in perseverance if you don't have the desire for something. That is the key. That's the key that is there. That's what will force you, that will drive you to engage in this reflective process of self-adjudication, day in, day out, to develop that capability, all with the idea, what am I doing? What am I seeking? Right? What is it that I'm trying to be able to achieve? I'm trying to achieve ultimately Yiras Hashem and Das Elokim. How do I do that? Mishpat. I need mishpat. Mishpat, ultimately speaking, is going to be that self-reflective self-adjudication that I have to do over and over and over again, with the idea that it helps me to develop knowledge, awareness, consciousness that enables this entire elevation process to rise up in terms of Yira back to its source, which is within Das, which is the Das Elokim, according to Rav Nachman. It all goes together. What I'm doing, and what I'm doing in terms of the cosmic process, is actually being done within me. I'm doing it within me, and that's affecting and impacting what effectively is a cosmic process. I'm elevating, ultimately, the Yira back to its source. Okay? Those are the nitzotzos, the sparks which have fallen. I'm engaging in the process of tikkun. Tikkun. Not only doing that on a cosmic level, but it's done within me, and that's how I do affect the cosmos, by means of that rectification and that progress which is being done within me as a human being, as an individual. So patience and perseverance, of course, is rooted in desire. Okay, you have somebody who becomes wants to become a phenomenal concert pianist or something, very, 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 very worthwhile. It requires thousands of hours of effort and practice. You don't do that. Of course, you need patience and perseverance, but you don't have patience and perseverance to go through a process like that without that desire. And that's what is being spoken of in this proof text that Rav Nachman brings from Mishlei, from Proverbs. Okay, the searching for it like silver, hunting for it like it's treasure, and you want this with your heart. You want to go. That's what you need to be able to do. And that, again, that reflective process, okay, enables the individual to be able to develop this continuous capability of being able to properly analyze themselves. And the proper analysis of self ultimately enables the individual to elevate that fear back to its source via the consciousness that the individual is achieving and is able to develop within himself. Okay, what we'll do, that was I thought that was a better explanation than what I was doing last week. I didn't do so well last week. I went over myself and I said to myself, Mordechai didn't do a good job last week, so I wanted to go and explain this better. We're now up to Os Daled, which we'll do next week. Okay, and okay, thank you very, very, very much. I appreciate everybody participating, being here together with you. Make sure you always have your Sfaradi chart. Do not leave home without it, okay? Everybody have a wonderful week, and Yirtzeh Hashem will go ahead and we'll meet again next week and continue with number 4 page in the Breslov, in the BRI Likutei Moharan 348, 349. Thank you very much.